My grandfather is the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126 St. Petersburg Agreement. St. Petersburg Agreement 1. The Ottoman Empire ceded Bosnia and Herzegovina to the Austrian Empire. 2. The Ottoman Empire paid 50 million guilders in compensation to the Austrian Empire, 20 million guilders in direct compensation, and the remaining 30 million guilders were paid in 10 years with an annual interest rate of 3%. 3. France and Austria must recognize the independence of the Kingdom of Sardinia, and the independence of the Kingdom of Sardinia is jointly guaranteed by the five major powers. 4. France shall not form a Franco-Belgian customs union with Belgium, and the independence of Belgium is jointly guaranteed by the five major powers. 5. France shall not interfere in German affairs and shall not impose retaliatory tariffs on German regions. 6. The Ottoman Empire opened 12 ports including Tunis, Tripoli, Arriaga, Antalya, etc., and imposed an equal tariff of 5% on the five major powers. It shall not be changed without authorization, and must be decided by the participating countries through consultation. 7. Serbia is a protectorate of Russia, and Montenegro is a protectorate of Russia. A protectorate is a country that is forced to accept the protection of another country. It is a form of colonial rule. Imperialist countries use force to force other countries to sign unequal treaties, put these countries under their control, and make them completely lose their independence and become protected countries, usually translated as protectorates. 8. The Austrian Empire must return 32,000 Serbian prisoners of war, and in exchange Serbia should pay a ransom of 5 million guilders. Appendix 1 to Article 8, after consultation and decision between the Archduke of Serbia and Austria, the ransom of Serbia was changed to work in lieu of ransom. Appendix 2, the Austrian Empire must provide 400,000 tons of food to Serbia, and Serbia will pay with labor and the right to develop copper mines in its territory. 9. France has the right to demand compensation from the Kingdom of Sardinia, the amount of which will be determined by consultation between the two countries. The British successfully prevented France's ambitions and economic penetration into the Low Countries, which has to be said to be a major victory. At least that's what King Palmerston thought, thanks to the exposure of the French ambitions at this meeting. Palmerston discovered the French's conspiracy in time and successfully prevented it from happening. The British Empire is unshakable and immortal. Palmerston has already thought about how to write in the newspaper. As for Austria, let him struggle in the rotten land of Bosnia. France and Russia are the real opponents of the British Empire. Austria, a country with only toy ships, is not worthy of being an opponent of the British Empire. Don't Austrians like to do business? The capitalists of the British Empire can kill Austria's overseas trade with a little effort. Palmerston already has a plan. He originally divided Egypt's trade with the Austrians. It was just to win over Austria to put pressure on Egypt. Now that the teeth of the Egyptian tiger have been pulled out, Austria is useless. It's time to take back what originally belonged to the British Empire and drive the Austrians out of the Egyptian market. Except for the cotton trade, the profits of other trades in Egypt are very low. But there is still meat on the grasshopper's legs. As long as there is money to be made, someone will definitely do it. As for the old rival Russia, Palmerston has already formulated a full set of blocking strategies. Since Austria was useless, he supported the Ottoman Empire, Persia, and even the barbaric tribal countries in Central Asia. He supported all those who were anti-Russian. Just when Palmerston was complacent about successfully suppressing France and encircling Russia, Guizot found Furcac and said that French bankers were happy to help him solve the problem of reparations. It was just that Guizot inadvertently planted the fuse of the future Holy Land crisis. Metternich was surprised by Franz, his student. He did not expect that he could solve the crisis peacefully without offending Russia. As for the two rotten lands of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the people in the country did not know about them. In addition, the area of Bosnia and Herzegovina is much larger than the current Principality of Serbia, and the deliberate propaganda of the Rothschild Bank. I am afraid that the people in the country are too happy to be happy. The latest novel is published on the 6th-9th book bar. Chapter 127, The Tsar's Wrath, Part 1. The Russians reiterated that Serbia and Montenegro were his protectorates, and this time they actually got Austria's tacit approval. According to Nasrallov's judgment, Austria is very likely to want to temporarily withdraw from the competition with the Ottoman Empire in order to digest the Bosnia and Herzegovina region. The current situation is that the Principality of Wallachia, the Principality of Moldova, Serbia, and Montenegro blocked Austria's way eastward. These four countries have one thing in common, that is, they are all Russian protectorates. Although Austria promised to guarantee the independence of the Kingdom of Sardinia under the intervention of Britain at this meeting. But the French also withdrew from the Kingdom of Sardinia, and the remaining Kingdom of the Two Sicilies and the Papal States were simply unable to compete with Austria for the leadership of Italy. At the same time, Austria's major railway repairs in northern Italy can prove that the focus of the Austrian Empire has shifted from the Balkans to the Italian region. This is another good news for Russia, because in this way, Russia has one less strong competitor in the Balkans. Austria's withdrawal from the competition in the Balkans means that the biggest contradiction between Russia and Austria has disappeared. This time, Austria sent the Crown Prince to visit St. Petersburg to show goodwill. If Franz could really marry a Russian princess, the alliance between the two countries would be even more unbreakable. Nashirlov seemed to see the hope of Peter's will being fulfilled, and Russia would retake Constantinople and rush into the warm ocean. The glory of the Third Rome, the dream of many generations, is about to be realized in his own hands. When Nashirlov reported to Tsar Nicholas I, tears filled his eyes unconsciously. Whether it was a play or from the heart, it made him have a better impression in the Tsar's heart. The Tsar was very satisfied with the peace talks and had ordered a 7-day banquet. This time, Austria did not play by the rules and successfully crushed Palmerston's conspiracy to provoke conflicts between Russia and Austria. The Tsar's close ministers all thought it was the credit of Prime Minister Metternich, and they were all considering whether to introduce him to a lover or something like that. After all, Lord Metternich's reputation as a playboy spread far and wide, and he had a son in his 50s. Tsar Nicholas I had a different opinion. The cunning kid might be the key to the problem. Of course, as an ally, such a person is trustworthy, but he may become an enemy one day. We must teach that idiot a lesson. Others are already making plans for national affairs. Our own son is still looking for flowers and willows all day long. Is this the child of other people's families? The Tsar sighed. Liu Bai, how is the matter? I asked you to investigate, Your Majesty. There are 163 officials involved, 14 banks, and the amount of money. Duke Liu Bai was a little embarrassed. Tell me. You are the head of the intelligence department. You can't not know this. The Tsar's voice was full of anger, because he had a premonition that the amount must be extremely huge, which made the Duke so embarrassed. Yes, Your Majesty. A total of 35 million rubles. Some officials privately sold our country's strategic reserve grain and weapons and equipment to merchants. And now some officials are offering to buy from merchants the materials that the unscrupulous merchants bought from Russian officials at a low price before. The Duke, who was known for his coldness and ruthlessness, was speaking tremblingly at this time. Because his next words would determine the life and death of tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people. The merchants have bought out our inventory. Our soldiers have no weapons, ammunition, or even food. The difference is 35 million rubles. Tsar Nicholas I slammed the table and stood up, pacing the room without saying a word. The bigwigs in the core of Russian power held their breath, waiting for the Tsar's decision. Good. Good. Good, the Tsar said 3 good words in a row. These parasites are really new. They cheated me of 35 million rubles by transferring money from one hand to the other. I want to let the people of this world know that no one can deceive me. Any villain who dares to challenge the Russian Empire will suffer a catastrophe. The Tsar's angry voice echoed in the hall, and no one dared to look up. But everyone knew that someone was going to be unlucky, and everyone had a chance to make money. The latest novel is published on the 69th book bar. Chapter 128 Chapter 11.1 The Tsar's Wrath, Part 2. How much money did these 163 officials receive in bribes? The Tsar asked. A total of 3.01 million rubles were received in bribes, of which 3 major officials received 1.5 million rubles, Duke Liu Bei replied. Selling out the country for 3 million rubles? How should these traitors be sentenced? The Tsar continued to ask. According to Russian law, the amount of embezzlement and bribery is huge, and the property should be confiscated and the person should be exiled to Siberia, a senior civil servant replied. He said this because some of them were his relatives, and because someone bribed him to speak well of these people. The Tsar laughed in anger. Oh? They just embezzled a huge amount? They bought and sold state materials at such a critical moment. What else is it but treason? You dare to defend them? No, Your Majesty. It's just according to the laws of the Russian Empire. The civil servant wanted to portray himself as a fighter for defending the law, but the Tsar didn't want to give him this opportunity. I am the state, I am the law. I am the absolute monarch of all Russia, the protector of Siberia, and I now sentence you guilty. Exile to Siberia, immediately. Your Majesty, please have mercy, I did not mean it, I am just following our Russian law, the civil servant pleaded loudly, but accidentally angered Nicholas I again. Shut his mouth. Drag him out immediately. The Tsar personally gave the order, and several guards ran in and dragged the unfortunate civil servant out. Your Majesty, what about the rest of the people? Let them go to Siberia to dig potatoes, Duke Liubei asked. Digging potatoes? Those officials knew the law and broke it, which is a heavier crime. You know how to deal with treason. As for those termites, my country does not need those garbage. Let them get out of my country, my empire, as you wish, my Majesty. Duke Liubei took the order and left 163 officials involved in the case were investigated and their property was confiscated, of which 120 were hanged, 9.8 million rubles were confiscated, 160,000 acres of land, 14 banks, 65 families behind them, and it soon developed into atrocities against a certain nation. Their property was confiscated and they were driven out of their homes, and more atrocities were waiting for them on the way to escape. During the purge, Russian officials did their best to extort and even fabricated charges. Many people were driven out of their homes wearing only thin clothes, and at this time, snowflakes were already falling in St. Petersburg, and it seemed to be colder than in previous years. Many of them were beaten and their dignity was trampled on. They wandered around the plains of East Europe in a daze. The lords and even serfs in some areas found these poor people and began to rob them wantonly. Men were captured as serfs, women were sent to brothels, and children were sold to traffickers. Their compatriots far away in Western Europe did not care about this. The Kingdom of Poland had perished, and only the Austrian Empire and the German region could provide them with shelter. As a result, a large number of refugees frantically crossed the Russian-Austrian border in search of shelter. However, their flesh and blood and property became the nourishment of Russia. In this purge, Russia gained at least 500 million rubles of property. At the same time, the debts of the Russian nobility and bourgeoisie were greatly reduced, and social contradictions were eased. The Tsar was glad that he had cleared a big tumor. Prussia and the Ottoman Empire were trying their best to prevent refugees from entering their country. Austria's national policy was already loose, and under Franz's persuasion, the border of the Austrian Empire was open to refugees. This caused a flood of refugees to frantically cross the Russian-Austrian border in search of shelter. This is not Franz's Madonna disease again, but now Austria really needs a group of rootless people. The latest novel is first published in 6ix9ine Book Bar. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 Chapter 11.2 The Tsar's Wrath, Part 2. At this time, a close attendant presented a secret report, and the Tsar dismissed his attendants and left only some Russian ministers. The Tsar took a glance and was shocked at first, then smiled. Liubei, your men are useless, Your Majesty, you mean Serbia. Duke Liubei was a little terrified, because the reason why our Russia was so passive this time was that his entire spy network in Serbia was uprooted. A woman, a child killed all your elites? Just say you don't always train female agents, women are unreliable. Are you saying that the person who killed our Special Third Department's intelligence network in Serbia was the Austrian Crown Prince? Duke Liubei was smart and naturally guessed that the child the Tsar was talking about was the Austrian Crown Prince Franz. He just couldn't figure out how such a young child discovered the Russian intelligence network in Serbia. It was even more incomprehensible how he turned his carefully selected agents against each other and broke through the obstacle of single-line contact. Although Hawkins was greedy for money and lustful, he was definitely not a person who would easily betray his motherland. After all, his family is still quite powerful in Russia, and they will not be stingy with a ransom. What Duke Liubei didn't know was that Hawkins seduced Duke Liubei's favorite mistress. If Duke Liubei knew, he would never let go of this waste who touched his woman. Yeladonia happened to be the plastic sister of Duke Liubey's mistress, and it was with this that Hawkins had to surrender. Because Hawkins knew that Duke Liubey had 1,000 ways to make him live a life worse than death. Hawkins didn't dare to face Duke Liubey, and he didn't have the courage to commit suicide. He could only choose to accept Yeladonia's proposal, hoping to find a place to live. There was another woman, which made Duke Liubey sweat coldly. After all, he had too many mistresses, and he always liked to train his mistresses into agents. If it was one of his mistresses who did it, it would be impossible to wash it off even if he jumped into the Yellow River. His favorite one in Serbia was secretly brought back to the country by someone he sent, so it should have nothing to do with it. The other two, one died in the operation in Pančevo, and the other disappeared in Belgrade. But in order to eliminate the trouble forever, Duke Liubey made up his mind in his heart. After returning, he must kill the stupid woman. Anyway, there are many substitutes in the Royal Ballet and the Royal Opera. Maybe it would be nice to pick a few from the orphanage in St. Petersburg and raise them. Nicholas I threw the secret intelligence in his hand to Duke Liubey, and Liubey immediately picked it up and read it. He was slightly relieved. The mastermind was indeed the Austrian Crown Prince Franz. The other one was Yeladonia, who seemed to be a very good agent who had worked in many departments. But she was just a small role that could not be smaller, and it was impossible for her to affect the entire intelligence network. Maybe Hawkins, the idiot, was dazzled by women and was turned against, thus ruining Russia's layout in Serbia. However, judging from the results, it was Austria that took the initiative to withdraw from the competition for the Ottoman Empire. Russia reduced a strong competitor and consolidated the Russian-Austrian alliance. Russia's strategy in the Balkans will often rely on this ally in the future. But judging from the existing intelligence, this ally will not have an easy life in the future. Because they took over a piece of rotten land, this area has seen 232 rebellions of varying sizes in the past 30 years. An average of 7.7 times per year, and every time the Ottoman army went to suppress the rebels, they hid in the mountains. The Ottoman army could only return empty-handed, and the rebels continued to rebel after the army left. The cost of the Ottoman Empire's stability maintenance here far exceeded the tax revenue here. The Ottoman Empire has ruled this place for hundreds of years, and its religious culture is similar. As a Catholic country, the Austrian Empire may have to pay a considerable price to rule this place. Now there is another question, that is, how His Majesty the Tsar is going to deal with it. After all, such a great hatred. We have to find a way to keep this kid here, His Majesty the Tsar spoke. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. It's just that Duke Liubey's scalp numbed when he heard it. Isn't this a bit too much? After all, the other party is just a child, and he is the crown prince of an ally. Chapter 130, Dance Party Incident, Part 1. Is there not a single girl from our Russian Empire that he likes? The Tsar said. Duke Liubey quickly wiped the sweat from his forehead. It turned out that he had misunderstood. It seems that His Majesty the Tsar really likes this foreign prince and must make a relationship with him. No, father. I asked him privately, and he said he is too young to think about these things, Crown Prince Alexander replied. What a guy who is not doing his job. As a member of the royal family, he doesn't even think about the eternal future of his family. Being young should not be an excuse for men. Tsar Nicholas I severely criticized Franz's negative attitude. Father, I am much better than him in this respect. Alexander was a little proud and wanted Nicholas I to praise him. But what greeted him was the Tsar's slap. Nicholas I slapped Alexander on the head. You guy, it's useless to have illegitimate children. How dare you come to me, your father, to seek credit? In comparison, the Tsar felt that his son was even more unreliable. After all, one was trying to maintain the rule of the Austrian Empire, while the other was quite critical of the foundation of Russian rule. Is there any way to make a fait accompli? Nicholas I said to himself. How old is he? Do you know that people often compare you with Ivan IV? Your thoughts are too terrible, Alexander complained. Do you know how Ivan IV's son died? Nicholas I said impatiently. Alexander, shut up. Don't you have that potion? The kind that makes people lose control after drinking it? Nicholas I suddenly slapped his head and remembered that his son seemed to have some secret weapons. Father, that is for women, not for men, Alexander replied. You haven't tried it, how do you know it doesn't work? Nicholas I asked. I have tried it, and used it on the son of Duke Ilotnevsky, Alexander smiled awkwardly. What was the result? He began to dislike women unlike men. The Tsar looked at Alexander. and a chill rushed from Alexander's tailbone to his brain. Looking at Nicholas pitifully. "Your son's butt cannot be clamped with a sword," Alexander said with a bitter face. "Waste, look at how old others are and they start to participate in state affairs. Look at what you think in your head." Nicholas was furious when he heard Alexander's words. Nicholas really wanted to open Alexander's head to see what was inside. How could he think of that? Could it be that this kid has tried it? The more Nicholas thought about it, the more disgusted he became. "Don't you have any way to facilitate this marriage?" Duke Lobe spoke first. "Your Majesty, I have a group of agents who are good at this. It's just that, the latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. The identity problem is easy to solve, and age is not a problem. Just do it." The Tsar didn't want to care about these things. He would surely have a good income after driving away those termites. Now it's time to enjoy it. It's time for a dance. Actually, Franz had no interest in balls or anything like that. But the Tsar's invitation could not be refused, so Franz had to prepare for it. Fortunately, the Russian court lady who is responsible for taking care of Franz, Baroness Voga, was an expert in this field. To be honest, Franz still liked this feeling, but he was a little short and often had to be accommodated by Baroness Voga. Chapter 131 Chapter 12.1 Dance Party Incident. Of course, ballroom dancing is very ambiguous in itself, and physical contact is inevitable. Especially before Franz crossed over, he was in his 20s, and he wanted to explore the mysteries of life. Hold your chest, hold your stomach, and look forward. Very good. Hold my waist, relax a little. The posture should be elegant, and the expression should be natural. Hold my hand tightly, Very good, Grand Duke, you are very talented. Franz never made the mistake that beginners are most likely to make, stepping on their feet. And he learned so quickly, far beyond Baroness Vadaya's expectations. He only bumped into Vadaya occasionally, and sometimes she even thought that the Grand Duke did it on purpose. As a high-ranking court lady, she didn't care about Franz's behavior at all. It's better to say that she is looking forward to this kind of thing after being in a high position for a long time. But the other party is still a child, so she didn't think too much about it. Franz blushed and was about to get closer. Enough, lady. You have too much physical contact with the crown prince. Please respect yourself. Major Boldo, who was in charge of Franz's safety, stood between Franz and Baroness Vadaya. Baroness Vadaya found it a little funny. It was obviously this guy who bumped into me. But because of his special status, it was difficult to refute him. Moreover, the Austrian crown prince was indeed of noble status, and she was just a female official of the Russian court. Due to the serious inequality between the two sides, even if she suffered first, she would be considered to be offending Franz. The punishment of the Russian court cannot be described by just the word cruel. She didn't want to be made into an ice sculpture for people to appreciate, or to be smashed and used as fertilizer for flowers. She was able to climb to such a high position, of course, because she was beautiful and noble. But also because she knew how to read people's expressions and knew who could be provoked and who could not be provoked. The Tsar personally ordered her to take care of this foreign crown prince who came from afar, and asked her to do her best to meet all of Franz's requirements. If she had a dispute with Franz's captain of the guard, the result would certainly be that the Tsar would be unhappy. If Nicholas was unhappy, it would be terrible, unlike the queen and the crown prince who were not particular about details. Nicholas was a very rule-abiding person. If anyone violated the rules he set, then this person would definitely remember this lesson for the rest of his life, and of course this person who violated the rules might not have a future. I am abrupt, please forgive me, Baroness Vadaya said very sincerely, which made Franz very embarrassed. What annoyed Franz even more was Major Poldo's behavior. Obviously, they were almost close. Franz howled in his heart. Although Franz had 3 maids around him, Maya was carefree and liked to talk to people about everything. When Franz was a child, he would lie on Maya's lap and take a nap. But since Maya had a companion, she lost interest in Franz. Franz was often left aside, and would only come back when there was something delicious or fun. Sarah is a girl who is prone to being infatuated with. At first sight, she fell in love with Colonel Schussel, a middle-aged man who was nearly 20 years older than her, who was beside Mrs. Sophie. Soon after, she fell hopelessly in love with Franz's younger brother, Maximilian. She tried every means to get close to Maximilian, but was finally ignored gorgeously. Ruskna looked good and knew what she was doing from the first day she entered the palace. It was just that Franz was curious. Aren't women supposed to be made of water? How come this woman has such hard bones? Colonel Balso ignored Franz's resentful look and pulled Franz to his side. Your Highness, I can do ballroom dancing too. I'll teach you. After saying that, he glanced at Baroness Voga, meaning what are you still doing here? Baroness Voga tactfully withdrew, leaving Franz alone in the wind. I wish the motherland a happy holiday, and I also wish all my book friends a happy holiday. Chapter 132 Chapter 12.2 Dance Party Incident. She had also been looking forward to the day when the princess would meet the prince. Mira Jane's grandfather was a high-ranking official in the government during Alexander's time. She should have been a daughter of a rich family, living a life of luxury and surrounded by people. But her grandfather supported the National Salvation League, Decembrists, and publicly swore allegiance to Grand Duke Constantine. Due to the pressure, the edict that Alexander I made Nicholas the crown prince was a secret will. So the ministers did not know that many ministers in St. Petersburg swore allegiance to Constantine at the time and supported Constantine as the emperor. But Constantine himself married a Polish woman and was no longer eligible to inherit the throne. He was unwilling to succeed to the throne and announced that he would give the throne to Nicholas. Nicholas' ambition was to be a general, and he was unwilling to inherit the throne. Instead, he swore allegiance to Constantine. When Constantine and Nicholas were pushing each other away, some nobles and some senior officers in the army planned to launch a coup. Mira Jane's grandfather was one of the earliest planners, but his grandfather opposed the abolition of serfdom and aristocratic privileges and was arrested as a traitor. But when Nicholas won in front of the Senate, many officials and nobles who were not directly involved in the coup were pardoned. However, Mira Jane's grandfather had just escaped from the Decembrists, and was sentenced to 10 years of exile in Siberia by the Russian court. At this point, her family's fate took a turn, and her father's career should have been bright. But after this incident, the court no longer trusted these nobles who had participated in the coup, and her father could only be a low-level civil servant for life. At the same time, the Decembrists also thought that Mira Jane's grandfather was a traitor, and even sent people to Siberia to assassinate him. The assassin was considered by the local governor to be a revolutionary who came to rescue Grievsky, Mira Jane's grandfather, and hurriedly reported to the Tsar. The Tsar was furious, so he changed Grievsky's sentence to 15 years of exile in Siberia, originally 10 years. These things happened before she was born, and now her father is just a low-level civil servant. Her family has long moved out of the city of St. Petersburg and moved to the suburbs, where the security is very poor. She had seen countless bloody fights and dirty deals on the streets since she was a child, and the children could only make a living by stealing and picking up garbage. In order to escape this environment and also to fulfill her parents' wishes, she practiced ballet since she was a child. At the age of 7, she was finally selected into the St. Petersburg Imperial Ballet Academy. She had imagined countless times that she would wear a beautiful dress and take an excited curtain call on the stage, surrounded by a crowd of people, applause, countless flowers falling like raindrops. Her parents moved to tears for her, and her grandfather could smile at her. However, she had to pretend to be another person and be selected like a commodity. Even that person had never looked at her straight in the eye once, and now she had to please the noble daughters around her. Just to be able to return to the Imperial Ballet Academy with peace of mind, because she pretended to be a duke's daughter. In Russia, it is a serious crime for a commoner to pretend to be a noble, enough for her and her family to stay in Siberia for a lifetime. Several noble ladies were jealous of her beauty, grabbed her hair, and tore her clothes, and threatened her that if she dared to tell anyone, she and her family would be sent to Siberia. She had learned to make compromises and give in to life, but she was still optimistic and still looked forward to a better tomorrow. She lay by the window and looked at the stars in the night sky. How peaceful and quiet. Will one of them belong to her? She thought to herself and chuckled. But the other noble ladies in the room didn't think so. They felt that this impostor was mocking them. Because only the most noble princesses and ladies could attend the ball tonight. On the other side, in the square in the center of the newly built Nordsovy city. Snap! 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 The whip hit the strong back heavily, one after another, as if it would never stop. Kalimi's eyes were bloodshot and he gritted his teeth. His white shirt had been torn, and the flesh and blood that were turned over made everything look hideous and terrifying. Don't stop. Give him 100 lashes. Blood mixed with saliva flowed out of Kalimi's mouth. The executioner was already sweating profusely, although he had held back. But 100 lashes would most likely beat the Grand Duke to death. The latest novel is published on the 69th book bar. The autumn sun was extremely scorching, and the blood was quickly burned and coagulated into black blood scabs. Chapter 133 Chapter 12.3 Dance Party Incident. A large number of officers, soldiers, civilians and prisoners of war gathered around the square. They had seen many floggings, but flogging a royal family member had never happened in the history of the Austrian Empire. Although Karimi was born into a royal family, he was a Grand Duke who could not be more flogging in terms of bloodline. His ancestors were a branch of the Esther family and followed Joseph I to Vienna. But soon Joseph I offended too many dignitaries because of his reforms, and ended up with a tragic ending of personal death and political demise. Since Joseph I had no heirs, the throne was inherited by his younger brother Leopold II. After Leopold II came to power, he liquidated the reformers. Karimi's ancestors were naturally not spared, and they were excluded from the core circle of power. Influenced by Joseph I's reform ideas, it was difficult for them to integrate into the aristocratic circle of Vienna. They were also rejected when they wanted to return to Tuscany, and they could only live in the house awarded to them by Joseph I for temporary residence. So far, the most unpopular royal family in Vienna has been created, and several generations have lived on small farms in the suburbs of Vienna. The execution was still going on. 100 lashes was definitely a very severe punishment. If the executioner had a darker hand, a dozen lashes would cripple a person, and 20 or so lashes would kill a person. Father, do you want to continue? If you keep eating, someone will die. Archduke Albrecht, as Karimi's cousin and classmate, did not want to do so, because Karimi's impulsiveness had cost him his life. A few lashes will help him remember. Do you know how many people died because of his impulsiveness? Karimi can be punished here, but they don't even have the chance to be punished. Archduke Karl slammed the wine glass to the ground, and the officers around him were all silent. Archduke Karl rarely showed his anger, but the war report made him very angry. The lives of 8,000 soldiers, the entire southern part of Vojvodina was burned to a white land. This was also thanks to Madame Sophie persuading the Regency Council to temporarily increase national construction projects, Danube Flood Control Dam, Nordsav New Town, Border Free Trade Zone, Vojvodina Railway. Otherwise, these homeless people would either sell themselves, sell their children, or become bandits and wander along the border. Of course, the worst thing is that there are starving people everywhere and people in mourning. Since this is a defensive war, the losses are huge but looting is not allowed. Some people have been unable to restrain themselves from making some small moves in private, but Archduke Karl suppressed them with thundering means. Archduke Karl first executed more than 300 soldiers suspected of XX, robbery, and extortion, and then guaranteed in front of the entire army that the fallen soldiers would receive double pensions, the meritorious soldiers would be rewarded, and the injured soldiers would be treated to appease the restless army. Of course, after the Battle of Nordsavi, a large amount of supplies flowed from Vienna and other places to Nordsavi, which greatly relieved Archduke Karl's pressure. In particular, the intervention of the church made ordinary soldiers completely lose their temper. It's just that Archduke Karl is a little confused about the current church. Why do the priests get some small insects and tree roots like witch doctors and give them to people to drink? Of course, we can prevent the soldiers from making trouble or mutiny, and let them do whatever they want. Albrecht was a pure soldier. He didn't like politics and didn't care about it. He only knew that Karimi was an excellent officer, at least better than most of the people in the Vienna Military Academy. Father, even if you beat people to death, they won't survive. The dead are gone, and the empire's military reform still needs him. You are right. His theory is quite solid. Let him go to the Vienna City Defense Army to train with you. Otherwise, he will cause great suffering to the people. Archduke Karl had been appointed as the governor of Vojvodina. His first order was to dismiss Karimi and send him to Vienna. And that kid Karimi will not be beaten to death. I promise you, Archduke Karl said. Albrecht knew his father very well. He would not talk nonsense. Most of the time, he had arranged everything for Karimi. The executioner at this time was an expert. He just raised it high and put it down gently. It looked extremely fierce, but in fact the sound did not come from Karimi's back but more from the whip itself. Occasionally, a few whips, although the skin was torn, did not hurt the bones. The reason why the first few lashes were heavier was because it hurt Karimi, so he didn't know if he was hit again after that, and it was just to avoid hurting his self-esteem. St. Petersburg, the palace villa, The second-floor flower hall. They came from afar, just to serve as a foil. Now they are staying in the same room with a fake, and this fake dares to laugh at them. Isn't it just that she looks better? There are many prostitutes in the long streets and dark alleys who are good-looking. It is said that people with poor blood are uneducated. Several brave noble ladies saw Mary Jane staying alone at the window, with no defense behind her. Several indignant girls discussed. Have you heard? It is said that there are few people who fall to death in the palace every year, as if there are demons at work. Anyway, there are few people who fall to death in the palace every year, and one more doesn't matter. There are indeed a few people who fall to death in the Russian palace every year, but most of them are because they are drunk. Look at the posture of that country pariah. Isn't it dangerous? Yes, you see she is still giggling. She must have been tempted by the devil. Shall we help her? A girl suggested. Of course we should send her to see God. Only God can help such a poor person. Zhenya is the leader of this group of girls. Her father is a provincial governor but of humble origin. He forged his identity and gave birth to her with the daughter of a duke. Although Zhenya's father is of prominent status, his status is not recognized by the nobles. She was also excluded in the circle of upper nobles. This time, her father bribed the emperor's attendant to exchange for her the opportunity to meet Franz. But she didn't expect that she was just a foil and didn't even have the qualification to attend the ball. The fake one irritated her nerves even more. She was actually staying with a pariah. This pariah dared to laugh. She couldn't stand it. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book forum. Zhenya, you are such a good person. Haha, a girl smiled and flattered. Haha. Several girls came behind Mary Jane without anyone noticing. Mary Jane was still holding her face and looking at the stars and the moon. Not knowing that danger was approaching, she saw the brightly lit dance hall in the distance. Mary Jane envied those girls who could participate in the dance. They were born at the end of Mary Jane's struggle. Mary Jane still needs to work hard. Maybe one day in the future, she can perform for them in that hall. Suddenly someone shouted behind Mary Jane, which really scared her. Before she could calm down, someone suddenly pressed her waist. You devil, get out of her body. Mary Jane looked back and saw twisted and weird smiling faces. She didn't know who was the devil. Someone picked up her legs and was about to throw her out of the window. She grabbed the window sill with both hands to prevent herself from being thrown out. She didn't understand what she did wrong, but she begged. I'm sorry, please don't do this, I beg you. Suddenly, the hand holding her loosened, and she thought the other party's prank was finally over. Thank you, but before she could finish her words, she was thrown out by someone with great force. Although it was only the second floor, the ground was already frozen solid. Her eyes widened and her body slowly fell. Why, my life is so passive. If Mary Jane thought so in her heart, she closed her eyes resignedly with tears in the corners of her eyes. Chapter 134 Chapter 12.4 Falling from the Sky. But she did not fall on the cold ground. Someone caught her under her body. Who saved me? She opened her eyes in disbelief and saw a boy of her age. Is this Orlis? Can a lolly fall from the sky? Are you a local specialty? Franz laughed and looked upstairs. The murderers upstairs hid immediately. After all, this was not something worth showing off. If they ran into someone else, they could still act arrogantly. But if it was this foreign prince, it would be a very terrifying thing if he said something in front of Nicholas I. Nicholas I's cruelty was known to passers-by. He sighed in his heart. It seems that this place is not peaceful, but it is also a bit bold to kill people in the palace. Is there any secret about this girl? Hey, it seems that I have seen her before. She seems to be the daughter of a duke. There is an assassin. Protect your highness, Major Ball yelled and interrupted Franz's thoughts. Major Ball rushed towards Franz. Franz felt helpless and kicked him in the crotch. Shut up, don't scare me. Franz's movements were a bit too big, and Mary Jane subconsciously put her hands around Franz's neck to avoid falling. Franz looked at the little beauty in his arms and realized that this seemed a bit inappropriate. Franz wanted to put Mary Jane down, but Mary Jane jumped into Franz's arms again as soon as her feet touched the ground. Only then did Franz realize that the girl's too wide and tender feet were bare, and the girl's shoes had fallen somewhere when she fell from the building. Mary Jane was also embarrassed, making such a strange move on their first meeting. It was just Mary Jane's natural reaction just now. She wanted to get down and walk by herself. But the ground was frozen, and it was impossible for the girl to walk barefoot. Franz's self-esteem and the education he received did not allow him to do such a thing. Franz shook her with his hand, and Mira Jane was lighter than she looked. Just hold her like this. Franz made up his mind. He had never held a girl other than his sister. His sister asked him to bring some local specialties back, but he didn't know if May counted as one. She was still a little shocked after falling from the building and landing in the arms of a foreign prince. Franz looked at the confused girl in his arms. You just fell from the building and I just happened to pass by. Do you want me to take you home? Mira Jane shook her head vigorously because she was afraid to go back. Then come to the ball with me? I'm still short of a dance partner. Mira Jane was held in Franz's arms like a frightened kitten, and nodded with a red face. Time went back to a quarter of an hour ago. Franz looked exhausted because he had received secret special training from Bordeaux. But the invitation of the Tsar could not be refused, so he had to drag his tired body to attend the ball. With the help of the maid, Franz changed into a decent dress. Although it looked a bit rustic, it was still suitable. However, he encountered embarrassment when he went out. Bordeaux and his guards surrounded Franz in the center. That's right, they formed a small hollow square. Franz asked with a frown, Bordeaux, what are you doing? This is the palace of the Russian Empire, Your Highness. You are still young, and danger is everywhere. We will protect you with our bodies and lives. Is this really useful? Don't worry, Your Highness. We are professionals. Watch out, we will defend you absolutely. The latest novel is first published on liujiu9shu.com. Franz held his fort and walked towards the direction of the ballroom surrounded by the crowd. Just when Franz felt embarrassed and looked up at the sky, a girl suddenly fell down. Just say that there is a loophole in this defense. I knew there must be an attack from the sky. Chapter 135 Chapter 12.5 Good Dance Partner. No. Grand Oak Franz, you can't let someone of unknown origin be your dance partner. She might just be a runaway maid. We should hand her over to the Russian court. Major Bordeaux covered his private parts and jumped in front of Franz again. It's very rude of you to do this, Major Bordeaux. Watch your words and deeds. She is Duke Vdorovich's daughter, Anna, not someone of unknown origin. Franz almost laughed out loud. He had found a treasure this time. Although Duke Vdorovich was not a member of the Russian royal family, he was the governor of Kazakhstan, which was newly conquered by Russia. He was a marginalized powerful figure, but it was great that his daughter was assassinated in St. Petersburg. Franz began to carefully look at the girl in his arms. Her clear and deep eyes, wide and delicate skin, long eyelashes, and delicate face were all in line with the aesthetic view of the Orientals. I don't know if she is a good wife, but at least she is a good dance partner, Franz thought to himself. However, Franz's wolf-like eyes made Mira Jane's scalp numb. Mira Jane certainly didn't know Franz's evil thoughts. She just instinctively felt like she had just escaped from a wolf's den and fell into a tiger's mouth. But his eyes looked so clear, Mira Jane thought to herself, but for a moment she felt as if a strange uncle was looking at her. The two people's eyes met, and Franz felt really lucky. After all, Austria needed Russia as an ally for quite a long time, and it was definitely the right choice for Franz to marry the daughter of a Russian duke. The stability of the Russian-Austrian alliance can relieve the worries of both sides. Russia can continue to expand to the Balkans and around the Black Sea, and even to Central Asia. Austria can go south to fight for Italy, go north to fight for Germany, and of course, go west to take back the territory belonging to the Habsburgs. Franz didn't worry about what would happen if Russia took over the Balkans, because that was a problem for the British to worry about. Franz only cared about how to consolidate the existing power and build it into a brand new country. Mira Jane didn't have as many ideas as Franz. On the one hand, she felt shy when a young girl met her favorite man, and on the other hand, she felt a sense of grasping happiness. Mira Jane didn't want to give up the feeling of being treated gently. All she wanted was a person who could make her happy, and she was willing to do anything for it. Even if she was a fake, she wanted to try. If she succeeded, would her father be promoted from then on, and would her grandfather be able to do the same? Maybe her mother would come back. Your Highness, it's not appropriate for you to hold a Russian duke's daughter like this, Bordeaux reminded. Bordeaux opened his arms again, and Franz kicked Bordeaux in the crotch again. Then why don't you go find a pair of shoes? Why are you still standing there, Your Highness? What are you looking at? Why don't you go find a pair of dancing shoes? Bordeaux said with difficulty, covering his crotch. Come back, I don't know what size it is. What are you doing? Franz was speechless about the group of guards around him. Serving the Habsburgs for hundreds of years is just like this? Bad review. Franz put his hand on Mira Jane's foot and measured it. Size 36, 23 cm, go and pick a better pair. Franz's unconscious action made Bordeaux feel that the Crown Prince was a very frivolous person. Fortunately, he had a lot of experience in this area, which might come in handy in the future. London, the city of finance, the Rothschild family manor. The most powerful financiers of this era gathered here, anxiously waiting for the results of the St. Petersburg negotiations. Everyone in this country knows a fact, that is, the Rothschild family's intelligence is the fastest and most accurate. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136 Chapter 12.6 Free Advertising. No one dares to underestimate the intelligence system of the Rothschild family in Europe, just as the Rothschild family was the first to know the news of Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo. Refer to the currency war below, and this family took advantage of the intelligence and cut a lot of leaks. It has left a strong and colorful mark in the history of world finance and made the name of Rothschild resound throughout the world. The Rothschild family relied on intelligence faster than the British country. Know the result of the war one step ahead. This news was a whole day later than Nathan's intelligence. And Nathan made 20 times the money in this day, which exceeded the total wealth of Napoleon and Wellington in decades of war. The Battle of Waterloo made Nathan the largest creditor of the British government in one fell swoop, thus leading the issuance of British public debt in the future, and the Bank of England was controlled by Nathan. British public debt is the certificate of future government taxation. The obligation of the British people to pay various taxes to the government has become a disguised taxation of the Rothschild Bank on the whole people. The British government's fiscal expenditure is raised by issuing government bonds. In other words, because the British government does not have the right to issue currency, it must borrow money from private banks and pay an interest rate of about 8%. All principal and interest are settled in gold coins. When Nathan held an overwhelming number of British government bonds in his hands, he actually manipulated the price of government bonds and influenced the entire British money supply. The economic lifeline of Britain was tightly grasped by the Rothschild family. You must know that Britain was the most powerful country in the world at that time, and the strength of a family that controlled the economic lifeline of Britain can be imagined. It's just that the desire of capital is endless, and they can't be satisfied by controlling Britain. What they want is the whole world, so that capital can connect the world as one. And they will control the world and control everything. Austria, France, and Russia should all be in their hands, so they must make money. War is a good way. After all, when the cannon sounds, gold is worth a lot. After the bragging, in fact, the Rothschild family at this time just wanted to make a fortune with Austrian government bonds. It's just that the information sent back made these capitalists unhappy. Bosnia? Herzegovina? What the hell is that? Isn't it Serbia? Then can Austria still go to war with Russia? Is there gold there? There is no gold mine. If there was, our people would have discovered it long ago. The Ottoman Empire ruled there for hundreds of years and still didn't find anything. As for war, it is even more distant. The Austrians seem to be planning to take a defensive stance in the Balkans and concentrate on operating in the Italian region. This group of unmotivated guys, don't they know that they have been exposed to the gun of Russia? They have been fighting with the French for hundreds of years in Italy to no avail. The Austrians seem to want to bury their heads in the ground like an ostrich and just not confront Russia. What about the compensation? How much is the compensation? They must have asked for a lot of money, right? Not a small amount. How much? 50 million guilders. Not bad, but the down payment is only 20 million guilders. The rest must be paid within 10 years, with an annual interest rate of 3%. That's it. What are these Austrians doing? How can they sell such junk bonds? The latest novel is first published on 69shushu.com. At this time, Solomon Rothschild paused the cane in his hand and said, "Shut up. How big is Bosnia and Herzegovina? Is it larger than the Principality of Serbia?" "Yes, Mr. Solomon. Bosnia and Herzegovina is 51,000 square kilometers. Go tell all the newspapers. I want everyone in Britain to know that Bosnia and Herzegovina is much larger than the Principality of Serbia." Austria won a great victory at the negotiation table. The Ottoman Empire paid 50 million guilders in compensation. There are still a large number of Serbian soldiers waiting to be redeemed in Austria's hands. Chapter 137 Chapter 12.7 The one who owes money is the master. France was still considering how to expand financing, but now the Austrian capitalists can't sit still. According to the Rothschild family's intelligence, Austria's forces have temporarily withdrawn from the Balkans and reached a reconciliation with Russia. It is even more likely to marry Russia and resolve the contradictions between Russia and Austria. The power of Britain and Russia has reached a balance again, and everyone knows that there will be no war for quite a long time. Previously, the Rothschild family convened European financiers to raise military funds for the future Anglo-Russian war. After all, the Tsar did not play by the rules in Russia, and took a large amount of capitalists' property for himself, which has touched the nerves of capitalists throughout Europe. As believers of capital, they cannot accept the existence of being above capital, and the emperor cannot do it either. So capitalists from all over Europe gathered here, ready to support Britain in attacking Russia. After all, Viscount Palmerston has publicly stated more than once that he wants to stop the Russians from moving westward. It is just right to take advantage of the Serbian crisis to intensify the contradictions between Russia and Austria and win over Austria to fight against Russia together. Britain can reap the benefits of being a fisherman, and they can cut the leaks of all Europe, so why not? Because the national debts of European countries have to go through them, and they can manipulate the market. The more European countries fight, the more they earn. As for how many people die, it has nothing to do with them. It's just that the result of the negotiations gave them a blow, and after these financial capitalists left disappointed. It was the Rothschild family's turn to worry. They had hoped to persuade these people to bet heavily on Britain. But now, let alone lending to Britain, the bonds of the Austrian Empire are still in their hands. They must make the market confident in Austrian national debt, so that they can earn more. Many banks that have dealings with Rothschild Bank also subscribed to part of the Austrian Empire's national debt. The Austrian Empire did not choose Serbia, which is strategically important and rich in resources, but chose Bosnia and Herzegovina, a remote and mob-ridden area. In order to prevent the Austrian Empire's national debt from being in their hands, Solomon Rothschild personally took the lead. Newspapers across Europe are working at full capacity, and various experts and scholars have come forward to speak out. European financiers headed by the Rothschild family vigorously promoted how great a victory Austria had achieved, how vast Bosnia and Herzegovina was and how rich it was. There were constant rumors that gold mines with amazing reserves had been discovered in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Austrian Empire obtained trade privileges in 12 trading ports of the Ottoman Empire, and Serbia would pay a huge ransom to Austria, etc. Soon, Austria's 200 million guilder bonds were sold out, just as Solomon Rothschild was about to have a drink. Suddenly, news came that a new Austrian 10-year bond with an annual interest rate of 6% appeared on the market. Due to the Rothschild family's unremitting propaganda before, and the news that the Russian-Austrian reconciliation would not break out in the short term, spread in the financial community. Some small capitalists who were unaware but had a lot of idle funds began to buy a large number of Austrian bonds. In the same period in the past, Austria was an exporter of capital. At that time, the Austrian Empire was lifeless and had no large-scale construction projects and economic development stagnated. So the capitalists of the Austrian Empire began to invest heavily in France and Prussia. As a result, the Austrians used their own money to support the construction of their opponents, and the two humiliated Austria twice in 1859 and 1866 respectively. The French stepped on Austria to return to the top, and Prussia stepped on Austria to complete the unification of Germany. Austria was trampled and had to share power with Hungary. As a result, Austria never recovered and eventually went to extinction. Now, due to the guidance of the Rothschild Bank, Austria has become a capital importing country. France authorized the Artes Bank and the Bohemian Solidarity Bank to secretly issue 500 million guilders. The Artes Bank is the bank of the father of Franz's maid Sarah, and the Bohemian Solidarity Bank is simply Mrs. Sophie's white glove. The Balaglia gang is naturally the black glove. France took the opportunity to sell the national debt in major European financial centers, and the sales performance was very good. London, Paris, Frankfurt, Lisbon, and even Istanbul can be seen in Austrian national debt. At the current sales rate, it only takes 3 months for the 500 million guilder national debt to be sold out. This is a real huge sum of money, with which Austria's infrastructure can be taken to a higher level. What do you think of the interest on such a large amount of national debt? 10 years later, Austria still has more than 10 billion in foreign debt to pay back. More debt is better than more pressure. The latest novel is first published in 6/9 book bar. Chapter 138 Chapter 12.8 What are you going to throw away? The reason why Austrian government bonds were sold so smoothly was that, firstly, they took advantage of the Rothschild family's support, and secondly, the world economic situation at that time. The Great Depression after the economic crisis caused people's money to depreciate. After the end of the Napoleonic Wars, there was a global capital surplus. The impact of the economic crisis in 1837 lasted until 1842, causing many bankers to go bankrupt. They were eager to find a safe way to increase their value. At that time, investing in Britain would lose money, and leaving it alone would also lose money. The famous East India Company was losing money, so they engaged in opium. They were looking for markets to dump everywhere, and at the same time, in order to deal with Britain's dumping, a large number of trade protection alliances appeared in European countries. Britain and France could suck blood from colonies, Prussia could suck blood from the German customs union, and Russia could suck blood from Asia. Austria did not have such a place, but fortunately, Austria's own market was very large and the tariffs were frighteningly high, so it only needed to reduce production. In short, France was very satisfied with this transaction. With this money, France could finally stop being tied up. Artelius once asked Franz privately, "Is it really necessary for Austria to issue such a large amount of national debt? The annual interest alone is frighteningly high. If it cannot be redeemed at that time, it may cause another economic crisis, which is not conducive to the long-term development of the Austrian Empire." Mr. Artelius was of course kind-hearted. As a spiritual Austrian, he was fully qualified. As a reward for this spiritual Austrian, Franz told him that Austria would be fully capable of redeeming all this at that time. Artelius also made up his mind that he must buy some Austrian national debt when he made money. It would be best to make money, as the Crown Prince said. If it was lost, it would be regarded as supporting national construction. If the money is lost, it can be earned again. If the country is destroyed, you will be homeless. St. Petersburg. Baroness Vadia brought a pair of exquisite dancing shoes, but looked at Kayana with strange eyes. Kayana suddenly made an arrogant gesture and said in a commanding tone, "Baroness Vadia, please change for me." It was normal for a noble lady in the imperial circle to boss around a court lady of lower status, but Franz could not accept a polite boy just now. Then he thought that it might be his modern concept at work. It was just that Kayana's expression seemed a little unnatural. She seemed very nervous. Franz just thought she was shy. Baroness Vadia changed Kayana's dancing shoes, but when she stood up, she accidentally dropped Kayana's shawl. Franz subconsciously leaned over to pick it up and found that the workmanship of the shawl was very rough and seemed to be knitted by himself. Franz recalled that his sister knitted the gloves, which were similar to socks, and he was relieved. Then he asked Major Boldo to get a high-quality shawl for Kayana. "Thank you, Franz." Kayana was a little touched, but Franz didn't care much. After all, some women are born to be drama queens. "You're welcome. Just consider it as a thank you for agreeing to be my dance partner," Franz responded politely. Franz and Kayana appeared at the ball together, attracting a lot of surprised and envious looks. But the protagonists of this ball were still His Majesty the Tsar and Miss Orlov, the hero of this negotiation. The Tsar frowned when he saw Franz coming to the venue with his dance partner, but he was relieved when he knew it was Frodovich's daughter. Anna Katerina pouted and ate the food on the plate. Alexander, who was standing by, saw this sulking little sister and couldn't help but prepare to tease her. "Isn't this our invincible Princess Anna? I heard that she was so angry that she lost her dancing shoes after the defeat a few days ago. As a brother, I want to show my concern." What are you going to lose today? The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Chapter 139 Chapter 12.9 New Uses of Ancient Prescriptions. Alexander had prepared a defensive posture to deal with what Anna might throw at him, but unexpectedly, this time his hot-tempered sister was eating quietly. Alexander couldn't help but sigh this time. It seems that she has lost her soul. This time Anna couldn't hold it anymore, and her little fist suddenly greeted Alexander. "You bad guy, I'll beat you to death, you annoying guy, don't hit me, the annoying guy is over there. Who wanted to show off to me at that time, and now you are jealous when you see me with other girls. You don't have much in common." Do you like me because you are bullied? This is not good, Alexandra dodged and said, making Anna blush with anger. Alexandra, who was standing by, seemed a little helpless when she saw Alexander, who was already in his 20s and still not serious, chasing her spoiled little niece in the hall. Her husband Nicholas I suppressed the December rebellion in the Senate Square in his 20s and was crowned as Tsar. But her eldest son was playing and having fun all day, and she didn't know when he would grow up. It is not known whether it is a blessing or a curse that her niece has missed out on the younger generation, that her husband has the most promising future generations. But who is the girl next to Archduke Franz? She is so lucky that she is better than his own children. In the crowd, Duke Lube's eyes flashed with strangeness. Prince Metternich raised his glass and motioned Franz to come over. Franz apologized to Anna and walked over. Oh, dear Franz, you really lived up to everyone's expectations. Teacher, you are joking. Franz did not finish his words. Your Highness, you are already the crown prince of the empire. You will be the heir to this empire in the future. You must be confident, just like when you said you wanted Bosnia and Herzegovina. Be decisive and unquestionable. If you take action, they will naturally follow. Okay, teacher. What do you want me to do? Franz forgot that Europeans don't like to be modest. I want to know how you plan to deal with this rotten land of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The mountain people here are notoriously difficult to conquer. There are some resources in the mountains, but there are no roads. The terrain is easy to defend but difficult to attack, but from the Austrian direction. If it is from the Ottoman or Serbian direction, it is easy to attack and easy to defend. Prince Metternich was still very worried about national affairs. Although Franz once said that he would take full responsibility, who would believe a child? Even if Metternich had to take the blame, he had to know the truth. Teacher, there is a mysterious country in the ancient East. There was once a country called Lu. Lu produced a kind of fine white silk cloth called Lu silk, which was famous for its thinness. Guanzhong first suggested that Duke Huan of Qi and his ministers take the lead in wearing clothes made of Lu silk, which set off a wave of pride in wearing Lu silk in Qi. Then he ordered that the people of Qi were prohibited from weaving silk, and all fabrics must be imported from Lu. The man named Guanzhong must have colluded with the profiteers, and the king was also a tyrant. Doesn't he know the principle of leading by example? Metternich's deputy and General Hina agreed, and Metternich also had a gloomy face. Please listen to me. As a result, Lu silk began to be in short supply and the price rose. The people of Lu saw that weaving silk was profitable, so they gave up farming and joined the silk weaving army. This is natural. Do whatever makes money. You can buy food with the money you earn. Franz just smiled and didn't reply. Metternich and Hina seemed to understand something. The people of Lu really believed it, so Guanzhong took drastic measures. He issued an order to reward merchants from Lu who sold Lu silk. 300 gold for selling 1,000 pieces of silk. 3,000 gold for selling 10,000 pieces. Suddenly, from top to bottom, Lu was swept by a frenzy of every household spinning and weaving silk, and almost all fertile fields were left uncultivated. In autumn, Guanzhong suddenly ordered to stop importing Lu silk. At this time, the three of them suddenly realized. Franz said sincerely, I think everyone has thought of the result, but I still want to repeat it. The latest novels are first published on Liu 9 Shu Bar. The economy of Lu collapsed in an instant. Lu silk was unsaleable, food was in short supply, prices soared, and the people of Lu could only stare at the mountains of Lu silk and starve. Lu's treasury soon could not support it, so it had to buy grain from Qi. Guanzhong continued to raise grain prices and ban grain from other countries from entering, making Lu's economy even worse. As a last resort, it had to submit to Qi. Please forgive me for only posting such a short message every day, because there are always force majeure. Chapter 140, Harming Others to Benefit Yourself. But Archduke Franz, with Austria's financial situation, there is no money to buy Bosnian furs at a high price. The newly deposited 200 million guilders have been prepaid for the reconstruction and pension of Vojvodina. As the Deputy Minister of Finance, Mercy was more concerned about the financial situation of Austria. It was right to think about things from the perspective of money, but Franz never said that he wanted to buy Bosnian furs. Although Bosnian furs were somewhat well known internationally at that time, Austria did not lack such things, and there were also a large number of furs in neighboring Russia. If the cost of buying furs was too high, there was no interest in killing 1,000 enemies and losing 2,000 of their own. Don't worry, Mr. Mercy, Someone has paved the way for us. Not only do we not have to spend money, we may even make a small profit from it." Franz kept it a secret, because Franz was still prepared to pay some price for the original plan. "Archduke Franz, you are still young, don't trust others easily." Metternich was still a little worried about this precocious student. After all, his expectations were too high. "Are there other allies? Or are the Russians ready to help us?" General Haynau was too straightforward, and Franz was too lazy to answer. "Who is it? Who is willing to spend so much money to buy Bosnia's fur? I heard that the Russians have made a big move in the country recently. Is it this matter? Russian favors are not so easy to repay." Murky's mind still did not leave the fur business. "Strictly speaking, they are not allies, and they may not even have common interests. It's just that their deliberate propaganda can help us solve the problem at hand." "Who are they?" "Rothschild." "Franz, are you going to borrow usury from them?" Murky's brain couldn't react, and Franz didn't want to pay attention to him. When the Rothschild Bank was selling our national debt, it once touted Bosnia as a treasure land. The most important point was the news that Bosnia might have gold mines, Franz said. "Gold mines? We all know that it was simply made up by Rothschild's newspapers to deceive people." "Archduke Franz, you don't really believe that there are gold mines in Bosnia, do you?" Murky replied. "A fool like you knows that the rumor about the gold mine is false, so how could Franz not know that?" "Franz, are you trying to use the news that there is a gold mine in Bosnia to attract local people to dig for gold?" Prince Metternich said. "Yes, the rumor was made up by Rothschild Bank, but not everyone knows it. We can use this information asymmetry to involve those greedy people." Franz smiled. "And now some people are ready to make a move. After all, there are too many people who want to get rich overnight in this era. Gold diggers from all over Europe are ready to try it after hearing the news, which gives us a chance to make a small profit." "Franz, what are you going to do?" Metternich felt that his students would give him another surprise. "My mother's clothing factory produces a large number of durable clothing, but there is no market. These durable clothing, jeans, are suitable for gold diggers. At the same time, in order to strengthen control over Bosnia, we also need to strengthen the construction of infrastructure." The three were speechless. The garbage produced by Mrs. Sophie's clothing factory could only be worn by workers. This matter is well known in Vienna. But she really gave birth to a good son and could do this. "We can build roads and simple houses on both sides of the roads to serve as hotels. We can also sell some supplies necessary for gold mining, but what if the locals also see this business opportunity?" "It doesn't matter. They don't have enough capital and there is no sufficient supply of goods. As for hotels and restaurants, I believe that the level of our Austrian service industry is definitely far superior to that of Bosnia and Herzegovina. They have no choice but to join the local gold mining team. At the same time, we can also open up tariffs on Hungary, allowing low-priced Hungarian grain to flow into Bosnia and Herzegovina to further hit local agriculture. Then let those who fled from the east go to Bosnia and Herzegovina to engage in usury." The latest novel is first published on Liuja Shuba. The three suddenly felt that the child in front of them was so scary. Chapter 141, There is a way in Bosnia and Herzegovina. People who are fleeing from the east. "Oh, Grand Duke, you mean the Jews. But Russia has just started to act. How can you be sure that it will turn into disaster?" Murky's tone finally slowed down a bit, and he no longer treated Franz as a whimsical brat. General Haynau cast a contemptuous look at Murky. As the illegitimate son of a Grand Duke and a Jewish woman, no one has more say than him. Even though his father is the candidate of Hesse, he has spent a miserable and discriminated childhood. Anti-Semitism is an old tradition in Europe. After all, if you don't have the money, you can get both fame and fortune. If you don't have enough orthodoxy, you can justify it immediately. If you cause a natural disaster or plague, you can immediately divert the contradiction and turn it into a man-made disaster. So as long as the Tsar has that idea, it will turn into a storm below, not to mention that this time the Tsar has made a clear statement and caught the person red-handed. Because of the illegal speculation of some capitalists, a group of small traders and even serfs were involved. Of course, the Tsar did one thing better than those European politicians in later generations, that is, he successfully killed most of the masterminds. Several big capitalists who bribed officials to buy military supplies at low prices and sold them in reverse were all arrested by the Tsar's gendarmerie and the property was confiscated. The Tsar's request was to sentence according to the crime, but it soon expanded. After the gendarmerie, officials, the army, and even the landlords and serfs joined the carnival. The persecution was also expanded to Eastern European races such as Poles and Yuroks, Ukrainians. European countries avoided these cancer refugees, but they were good medicine for Austria, which needed a lot of manpower to develop land and build. The land of Galicia, Vojvodina, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Dalmatia, as well as national railway projects and river projects, all require a lot of manpower. There are a large number of serfs in Hungary, but they are all tied to Hungarian land by Hungarians. Moreover, Hungary did not allow Austria to build railways, and there were also tariff issues. France could only resort to this last resort, and the honest farmers stayed in Galicia to open up wasteland. Among them, the Yuroks can stay in Galicia without worry, because they have no good feelings towards Poland and Russia, and even hate them. The Poles and other Eastern Europeans can be sent to distant places for construction, and the Jewish businessmen and capitalists can be sent to Bosnia and Herzegovina. These people are best at doing business. If they can develop trade in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it would be the best. If not, they can also lend money at high interest rates. Although the Jews like to publicize that their ancestors could only engage in usury in ancient times, it was because they were prohibited from engaging in any other industry or profession. They were often expelled and had no fixed assets and could only lend money at high interest rates. But who can tell whether they were expelled because they were expelled and then they engaged in usury, or they were expelled because of usury? Since ancient times, usury not only requires a black heart and a dishonest heart, but also requires violence and power as a backing. France believes that the local forces will welcome these outsiders because they can bring real money. But when they discover the harm, it is already difficult for them to get out. Skilled workers, knowledgeable scholars, and artists were sent to Nelitania, because there was a place for them to display their talents. However, all refugees entering Nelitania had to take an exam. The natives of Bosnia could choose to participate in national engineering projects to earn a little money, or go to the mountains to make a fortune. France would invest in hospitals, schools, and factories in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and would warn all those who tried to get something for nothing that there was no free lunch in the world. As for which path those people should choose, France had no control over it. Chapter 142. Don't look for love in marriage. Fighting poison with poison? Then let me wait and see. Prince Metternich was very happy that his disciple was already capable of solving national problems. What made the old man even happier was that Franz brought a Russian girl. Franz, it's not gentlemanly to always let girls wait for you. Kiana was still waiting for Franz stupidly. The reason was very simple, because she didn't know what else she could do. It seems that the girl has been fascinated by you, Archduke Franz. Metternich continued to speak, but I must remind you that if there is love in marriage, it is naturally best, but don't be crazy about looking for love in marriage. For the European nobles at that time, marriage was more like a combination of the interests of two families. Finding a lover was a very common phenomenon, and even many great poets and scholars said that there was no love in marriage. Franz did investigate Kiana's father a little bit, and he was an easy target to win over. And as long as the governor can fight for his courage to take down the Khanate of Khiva, the conflict between Britain and Russia will not stop. Franz didn't mind Britain and Russia fighting each other in Afghanistan. It would be better if the war lasted for decades so that Austria could rise peacefully. Another thing is that Franz was still very taboo about marriage between close relatives. A girl like this who was far away in Central Asia should be fine. As for lovers, Franz should have no shortage of such people after he became emperor. Moreover, this time Franz successfully solved the problem of unsaleable products in Madame Sophie's clothing factory. I guess Madame Sophie will reward herself with a maid. Yes, teacher. Then I'll leave. Franz returned to Kiana and smiled. Sorry to have kept you waiting. Soon. It's okay. That must be Prince Metternich. It is said that his youngest son was born to his wife and the housekeeper. Kiana joked with Franz in a low voice with the news she heard from the ladies. Franz didn't feel strange about such words. After all, gossip always spreads faster than the truth. No, although Prince Metternich has many lovers, he and his wife are also truly in love. As for the butler, he is a little confused. Franz knocked his head and remembered Metternich's funny old butler. Confused, Kiana didn't understand and thought it was a special German word. Oh, it means that the brain is not very bright. No woman likes that kind of man. Franz spread his hands. Haha, why would the smartest prime minister of Austria use a fool as a butler? Because he is a fool. Tsar Nicholas I, who had just received a war report, was very happy. In just 1 month, the British suffered 3 defeats in Afghanistan. Now the British plan to use Serbia to provoke relations between Russia and Austria has also failed. If the Austrian crown prince marries a Russian wife, Russia will be more confident in defeating the British in the subsequent struggle. But seeing Franz and Anna talking and laughing, some people were unhappy. Anna took a sip of juice and spat out 3 words, "Stinky man." "Oh, our Anna knows about men. Tell me how many hairs a man has on his butt. How many legs does a man have?" Alexander snatched the juice from Anna's hand and drank it all. "Get out. Hateful." And, look at him. Anna hit Alexander a few times, but found that she couldn't hide him, so she had to call his mother to deal with him. But what disappointed her was that a mother who doted on her son couldn't control Alexander. In desperation, Anna had to seek help from her 2 cousins, and finally drove away the annoying cousin with the efforts of the 2 cousins. But there was always a very annoying feeling in her heart that couldn't be shaken off, so she had to continue to use juice to relieve her sorrow. There was also someone who was frightened. That was Duke Limbay. He had messed up the previous things, and the news lagged behind the new intelligence organization Babada formed by the Tsar's eunuchs. Now the girl he found to take the blame is now mixed with the Austrian crown prince. If Franz found out that the girl was a scapegoat, the Tsar would definitely lose face. If the Tsar felt embarrassed, his favor, position, and even life would not last long. But how could he say that he just picked that girl randomly and didn't know why he chose her? But if the eunuchs found out that he did it, Duke Limbay could already imagine his miserable death. The latest novel is first published on 69 Shuba. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Bad News. If that was the answer, I might as well not say anything. But I had to say it. It was better for me to admit it. If Babada reported that I abused my power and put a few big hats on my head, I would never be able to clear myself even if I jumped into the Yellow River. At this point, Duke Limbay had no choice but to bite the bullet and said, "Your Majesty, there is something like this." Tsar Nicholas was in a good mood because good things had happened recently. And the previous operation to deal with the termites in the Russian Empire was simply worthy of being recorded in history and comparable to the reforms of Peter the Great. But after hearing the news from Duke Limbay, the Tsar's face became serious. People who are familiar with the Tsar know that there must be nothing good, especially what Duke Limbay said. Maybe the Tsar's sudden attack on domestic capitalists this time was done by Duke Limbay. The atmosphere in the venue suddenly became solemn, and foreign guests and envoys also noticed that the atmosphere was wrong. As the king of understanding, Palmerston was naturally confident because there was reliable intelligence that a large number of capitalists were planning to support Britain in attacking Russia. After all, Britain is mercantilism, and will never confiscate the property of legal merchants. He knows Europe well. Since ancient times, as long as there is money, there is no opponent that cannot be defeated. This time is no exception. The reason why Austria stands on the side of Russia is that the price offered by Britain is not enough. As long as the price is in place, Austria will definitely stand with him to fight Russia. And no matter how to avoid it, there will be a war between Russia and Austria sooner or later. Because from a geopolitical point of view, both sides are the leaders of their respective systems. The 2 major nations of Germany and Slavs will inevitably conflict in order to compete for living space and dominance in Europe. But before that, he also gave the Tsar a big gift, which was 412 Russian slaves. These were bought back from the Khanate of Khiva at a high price by Palmerston. The purpose was to prevent Russia from having a legitimate reason to attack the Khanate of Khiva. He returned these 412 Russian slaves not because he pitied the Russians, but to protect the Khanate of Khiva. This small Central Asian country does not know what kind of behemoth it is facing. The Khanate of Khiva was a slave-owning country. People with money and status would use slaves to show their status and power. The most prestigious slaves in this era were white slaves. The Khanate of Khiva had 2 sources of slaves. One was purchased from the Persian Empire, but the Ottoman Empire had declined and was unable to capture white slaves. No slaves could be exported to the Persian Empire, and the Arab sect could not capture people of the same faith as slaves. Another source of the Khanate of Khiva was Russian fishermen and border guards. The Russians have always been full of martial virtues, but there must be brave men under a heavy reward. The slave-hunting team of the Khanate of Khiva often crossed the border to harass Russian villages, capturing farmers, fishermen and lone soldiers. This aroused the anger of the local people and the garrison. When the news reached St. Petersburg, Tsar Nicholas I immediately convened a meeting. The meeting announced to all of Russia, the Tsar is the protector of all Russian people, and that Tsar's subjects will be liberated. At the same time, the meeting passed a resolution to rescue Russian slaves and ensure that the Khanate of Khiva could never threaten the Russian people. The Tsar personally appointed Orenburg Governor Petrovsky as the commander of the expedition. In March 1839, Orenburg Governor Petrovsky led more than 5,000 Russian troops and 14,000 camels carrying baggage to set out from Orenburg on an expedition. However, the steppe was severely cold in winter, and supplies were insufficient, so many soldiers died on the way. The troops had to be withdrawn 3 months after the expedition. In May 1840, only more than 2,000 soldiers returned to Orenburg, and more than 3,000 soldiers and 10,000 camels died on the expedition. The expedition ended in failure. If other countries faced such losses, they would inevitably give up another expedition. But what Russia lacked the least was grey livestock. The Tsar would inevitably expedition to the Khanate of Khiva again after resolving the Serbian crisis. Palmerston had previously sent people to contact the Khanate of Khiva and proposed to help the Khanate of Khiva train its army and establish a defense line. However, the Khan of Khiva rejected the proposal and stoned Palmerston's envoy. But Palmerston, who believed in the principle of interests above all else, was not angry. On the contrary, he admired the Khan of Khiva and believed that this man would be the key to resisting Russia's advance. However, Palmerston could not take this risk, so he sent people disguised as saints to rescue Russian slaves. After all, the Khanate of Khiva was too close to India. Once Russia occupied the Khanate of Khiva, it would be only a stone's throw away from India. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Chapter 144 Chapter 16.1 Bad News, 2. But this time Palmerston miscalculated again, and the gift he sent was still far away in Siberia. The Tsar did organize an expedition to Khiva, but it was just a stopgap measure under the public outrage. Russia already has too much of a barren land like Khiva. And Nicholas I was also very clear that once the Khanate of Khiva was occupied, the two major forces of Britain and Russia would directly meet Afghanistan. And beyond Afghanistan is India, which is the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. It is also the most important source of raw materials and tax revenue for the British Empire, and the British will never give it up. Compared with this, although the Near East is important, Britain's investment in the Near East is not much. Its influence on Britain is far less than that of India. Palmerston wrote in his report to the British Parliament, as for today's situation, the Franco-Belgian alliance is a threat to the heart. Russia is adjacent to India and has the intention to swallow India, which is a worry for the elbows and armpits. Austria is determined to trade and repay debts in order to live in a corner, which is a threat to the limbs. Therefore, the idea of destroying France comes first, followed by governing Russia, and then governing Austria. Now that France's dream is broken and the Austrian emperor is incompetent, only the Tsarist Russia is preparing its troops and eyeing the battle with Britain. India is the place where taxes are levied in the world. Britain has colonized the world, but India accounts for 9 out of 10 taxes. It is indeed a place of life and death that must be checked. But for the Russian Empire, the top priority is to regain Constantinople and complete the glory and dream of the Third Roman Empire for 400 years. Peter's will has made it clear that controlling the Black Sea outlet and Constantinople is the manifest destiny of the Russian Empire. Constantinople, the ancient city guarding the gateway to the Black Sea, is not only the center of the Orthodox world, but also the entrance to the Mediterranean. More importantly, it is also the religious core of the United Orthodox world and the perfect excuse for Russia to attack the Ottoman Empire. Therefore, this city has extraordinary significance for the Russian Empire and even the Russian nation. It is also a nightmare that has long troubled Russia and dragged Russia into trouble. As a descendant of the Romanov dynasty, Nicholas I never forgets the great cause of regaining Constantinople. Now that the Russian Empire has once again come to the gates of Constantinople, how could it go to enmity with Britain because of a barren land in Central Asia? Now Nicholas I felt an unprecedented crisis. His most favored young descendant, the Crown Prince who was Russia's most important ally, was deceived by his most trusted subordinate in Russia. Austria, a country that wants to save face, may temporarily enter it if it is really embarrassed, but it may stab it in the back at any time. The situation between Russia and Austria is very delicate, and both sides have too many ways to stab each other. Moreover, the strategic vision of this descendant he favored is also very vicious, and he is a ruthless person who dares to think and do. Whether it is the huge sum of money spent on the gambling in Vienna or the drama of directing Serbia's invasion of Austria, the Tsar dare not underestimate it. The accidental sentence "we want Bosnia and Herzegovina" instantly reversed the unfavorable situation of the entire negotiation. Austria took the initiative to give up Serbia, which is extremely important in strategic location, and successfully resolved the Serbian crisis. It jumped out of the trap designed by Palmerston in advance and consolidated its alliance with Russia. And now he seems to have taken a fancy to a Russian girl, and maybe even engaged to her. But if this kid knows that he has been fooled, what will he do? The Tsar looked at Duke Liubey with a cold gaze. As long as we explain clearly that this is a misunderstanding, Grand Duke Franz will understand. After all, the relationship between the two countries is more important, and the likes and dislikes of a child cannot change anything, Duke Liubey replied in a low voice. Oh? Is that so? Have you been hanging out with those scumbags for so long that you have forgotten that men have dignity? Damn idiot. Smartass. Chapter 145 Chapter 16.2 Bad News, 3. The Tsar stood up and left with Duke Liubey, heading for a room behind the hall. It looks like something big has happened. All the guests thought the same thing. Guizot is a typical capitalist who always pays attention to interests. Since the Holy Alliance cannot be broken up, let's talk business together. Austria is a semi-industrial country that is almost self-sufficient. The only thing that needs to be imported in large quantities is cotton. Moreover, Austria's tariffs are really a headache. It is impossible to make money by selling things in such a country. But there is one thing in France that Austrians absolutely cannot refuse, and that is money. The Austrian Empire is too poor, while the French Empire is in good financial condition, and private capital is the best in Europe. The profit cycle of investing in domestic construction is too long, and there is always the risk of revolution in the country. Guizot has worked hard to stabilize the situation, but domestic capitalists are still unwilling to invest in the construction of their own country. In order to find a way for domestic capitalists to obtain returns safely in the long term, Guizot is worried about it. The Ottoman Empire is good. By lending to the Ottoman Empire, France easily controlled the customs taxes of the Ottoman Empire. It was a bloodless battle, without the need to fight like the Russians, or to make promises like the British. In terms of influence on the Ottoman Empire, neither the Russians, who were marching in force, nor the British, who promised to protect the Ottoman Empire, were as good as the French, who were offering real money. Throughout the entire ball, Fouquet was inseparable from Guizot, like a licking dog of the sponsor. Guizot had tried to get French capital into Prussia, but was rejected. Because Prussia was afraid of France's influence and its ambitions for the German region. Compared with Austria, which was of the same ethnic group, it was obviously more difficult to accept the rule of the French, who had humiliated Prussia. But Austria was different. Austria was strong enough not to fear France, and at the same time needed a lot of funds for domestic construction. Who made the country have too many internal problems, resulting in serious backwardness of infrastructure. Duke Liubey was silent on the side. This man, known as the most terrible man in all of Russia, was now as helpless as a newborn kitten. Because Duke Liubey's power comes from the Tsar's trust. Without the Tsar's trust, he is nothing. The Tsars of the Romanov dynasty may be incompetent, but they are absolutely cruel. And Nicholas I was an iron-fisted emperor who ascended the throne during the rebellion. No matter how he explained that he had no choice, he had sacrificed thousands of lives. We have to think of a remedy. Let her be the daughter of Fedorovich. Give her a new identity. I don't need to tell you again what needs to be taken care of, right? Understood, I will do it immediately. No one will reveal her identity in front of Grand Duke Franz. Duke Liubey issued a military order, because he knew that if he messed up this time, he would no longer need to exist. It is not difficult to forge an identity, but it is difficult to shut up those who know the truth. For example, the noble ladies in St. Petersburg. These self-righteous noble ladies are all big mouths and are the best at spreading rumors. Come back, Duke Liubey was stopped by the Tsar. Have you checked the details of this girl? She knew she was not the daughter of the Duke, but she dared to seduce the foreign prince. Isn't she afraid of being discovered and imprisoned? The Tsar himself obviously did not know enough about the lower-class people. The lower-class people did not particularly care about their family background. Moreover, marrying someone with high status and income was the most common means for many lower-class girls to cross classes. It was not uncommon for this era, but it was simply treason for the Tsar himself. He had already defined the nature of this girl, a wanton and despicable witch. These were not important. What was important was that the Tsar had a handle on her. If this marriage could be facilitated, Russia would have an important chess piece in the Austrian Empire in the future. The queens in the West were not completely dependent on the emperor like in the East. The queens in the West had considerable power. They could even inherit the queen, such as the famous Empress Catherine Myroshilgrivsky. Her father is a civil servant of the 14th rank, and her family lives in the village of Masher, 15 kilometers east of St. Petersburg. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. Grivsky? She is a descendant of the Decembrists. Don't you know? You idiot. Nikolai was almost pissed off by his most trusted subordinate. Chapter 146 Extra. Under the rule of the Tokugawa shogunate, Japan also learned from a mysterious country to implement a long-term closed-door policy, prohibiting foreigners from coming to Japan and Japanese from going out to sea for trade, and only allowing merchant ships with the Netherlands to go to Nagasaki port for trade with special restrictions. At this time, Nagasaki became the only window for Japan to open its eyes to the world. The Tokugawa shogunate, which ruled Japan for nearly 300 years, was naturally not without merit. The Tokugawa shogunate stipulated that Dutch merchants entering the port of Nagasaki must report overseas news to the Nagasaki Bujio, who managed foreign trade affairs. Bujio was an official position in Japan at that time, such as Mushi Bujio, Temple and Shrine Bujio, Kanjo Bujio, Town Bujio, and Distant Country Bujio. The office of the Bujio was generally called Bujio-sho, which was equivalent to the Chinese yamen. According to the source of the news, it was divided into Tangfang storytelling and Lanfang storytelling. In addition, there was also Bifang storytelling edited by translators based on the oral statements of foreign merchants or excerpts from foreign newspapers. When the wind storytelling about a war came like snowflakes, the shock of the Japanese government was beyond words. Shiai Dangai-in took advantage of the convenience of being by the side of Mizuno Tadakuni, a senior official of the shogunate, to collect a lot of information about the war. Originally, Tangfang storytelling and Lanfang storytelling were official secrets at the time, and only senior officials holding important positions in the shogunate could see them. However, at that time, there was a group of patriots in Japan who wanted to awaken the people, and they tried every means to spread the news to the people in the hope of awakening the people and attracting the attention of the government. However, when the news spread to the people, the response from the people was like the collapse of the sky and the collapse of the earth. Many Japanese military strategists and Japanese Confucian scholars even kowtowed to the West at night, and then committed suicide by cutting their stomachs. Because before this war, they always believed that Confucianism was the most perfect doctrine in the world. The legendary country of etiquette and dignified country was defeated by the tiny barbarian from the West, Britain. A Japanese poet wrote, "Alice, the huge cannon shook the sky and the strong city was destroyed, the barbarian ships entered the port and the Han army fled. Alice. 1,000,000 gold coins for peace talks, to buy the barbarian chieftains for a day." As the opium-style storytelling about this war spread in Japan, everyone from shogunate officials, Ming princes, samurai at all levels, to ordinary people, and even Shuten and Kozan, all paid wide attention to it. The shogunate officials who were optimistic about the war before the war began to worry after learning the result. It is hard to say when it will affect Japan. The tragic defeat of the upper country sounded the alarm for Japan, which was also dreaming of closing the country to the outside world. Even Mizuno Tadakuni, the chief elder of the shogunate at the time, said, "Although it is a foreign matter, it is enough to serve as a warning." However, the shogunate did not have the determination to reform, but only strengthened its coastal defense afterwards. This made many Japanese patriots discouraged and decided to overthrow the rule of the shogunate to avoid the crisis of national extinction. The Japanese summarized the failure of the war and attributed it to 3 political corruptions, closed eyes and ears, and lax military preparations. The British know the Qing, but the Qing is not only the British. The Qing boasts of its strength. The British get angry when they see the barbarians. They blame them when they are angry, and ignore them when they boast. The victory or defeat is clear before the battle. They began to criticize Confucianism, talk nonsense, write 8-part essays, and are out of touch with reality, which can only fool the people. As more and more materials of opium storytelling became available, the Japanese criticism became more and more intense. The military preparations were not repaired, the tactics were poor, the military pay was withheld, the rewards and punishments were unclear, and there were mutual constraints. Shiai Dangan commented that a good general is the tiger of the country. It is difficult to control the fox by letting the tiger go and letting the mouse go. At the same time, some people were ready to go to see the world with their own eyes. Another purpose of their going to sea was to find the legendary One Piece. No, it should be the main text of history, cough cough cough, but it was actually a strange book called Heigo Tazi. At this time, the three young people, Nakatsuko Risa, Bando Shoji, and Shinohara Hisaro, gave up all their rights and property in Japan, secretly ran to the Dutch merchant ship and began their journey to the west. Chapter 147 Chapter 16.3 Grievsky. Duke Liubei had heard of this name, but dealing with the leader of the Decembrists was already the business of his great predecessor. It is said that this Glaevsky had a chance to become the prime minister of the Russian Empire, but he betrayed Nicholas I at the most critical moment. The specific details involved the Tsar himself, so few people knew the inside story. Duke Liubei only found some clues from some people's words and the archives of the Special Third Department. Before becoming the Tsar, Nicholas I was not a popular Grand Duke. He did not like reading, but liked military affairs. He read many military works, studied architecture, and designed a fortress himself, but it was rejected by experts because there was no cement of that strength. Nicholas was a devout Orthodox Christian who strictly abided by the Orthodox canons, was very self-disciplined, and never missed any religious activities. Nicholas did not smoke, and hated people around him who smoked. He never drank strong liquor and insisted on exercising every day. But his personality and habits were incompatible with the nobles at that time. Both his comrades in the army and the nobles in the upper class thought he was a cold and arrogant person. Nicholas had almost no friends, and Grievsky was one of them. They were both devout believers, both liked architecture, and both were disliked by others. It is said that Grievsky's rapid career in the first half of his life was inseparable from Nicholas' frequent boasting of his friend's loyalty and competence in front of his brother Alexander I. July 12, 1826, St. Petersburg, Winter Palace. Grievsky, my friend. Tell me you were framed. I am going to let you be my prime minister. Someone must be jealous of your talent. Nicholas was straightening the collar of his old friend. The long-term imprisonment turned this romantic nobleman into a beggar with unkempt hair and dirty face. Your Majesty, what they said is true. I oppose you to be the Tsar because you love your army too much and have not received Orthodox emperor education. This country is already in tatters and can no longer withstand your tossing, but you clearly told me in the past that it was your lifelong dream to recover Constantinople. Although Nicholas had known it for a long time, he still felt sorry to hear his old friend say this. He wanted to give his misguided friend a final push. That is the glorious mission of our Russian nation, not that of any one person. Nicholas, you should abdicate. You are not fit to be the Tsar. Being a general is the best thing for you. You are brave, honest and fearless, but you are not cut out to be the Tsar. What you said is useless. I am the Tsar now. All the rebels have been suppressed by me, and their remnants are already unable to take care of themselves. I am the victor, I am the destiny. Nicholas, you only destroyed the bodies of these people, but you can never kill all the thoughts in people's heads. Russia must reform, otherwise the peasants will rise up and overthrow us. You are exaggerating. The peasants regard me as their father, and the soldiers of the guards are also coerced by you people. They all regret their actions, but you still exile them. They betrayed their oaths and their motherland. Shouldn't they be punished? Nicholas roared angrily. They are just fighting for the justice in their hearts. What kind of bullshit justice is that? If there is no punishment for mistakes, then what is the use of law? I am the Tsar. I am justice. You shameful traitor, I don't want to listen to you anymore. You will be punished. Will I go to the gallows? No, you will have plenty of time to repent for your crimes in the ice and snow of Siberia. Chapter 148 Chapter 16.4 Bad News, 4. One thing that Duke Liubei was sure of was that this Grievsky must have had a very good relationship with Nicholas I, otherwise he would have died many times just for disobeying the Tsar. But this made the matter even more difficult, because Duke Liubei originally planned to kill the Grievsky family to avoid complications. But the Tsar might not want to do this, so he had to wait for the Tsar's further instructions. Nicholas was also very troubled by this old friend. He could have come back just by admitting his mistakes. But he had to stay in Siberia for more than 10 years, doing things that only slaves did as a civil servant. Nicholas thought of another person he hated, Pushkin. A descendant of a black slave, the most regrettable thing in his life was that he could not participate in the December Revolution. Thank God, this unlucky guy died in a duel. Otherwise, Nicholas would have suspected that the people he admired liked to go against him. Nicholas commented that Pushkin was a good poet, but not a good subordinate. 3 young people who were once looked down upon by others and could only hide in the corner and drink, some died for love, some were willing to be exiled for the morality in their hearts, and some were smoothed by time for their ideals. Nicholas finally sighed, "Bring him here, I want to explain it to him in person." Duke Liubei also breathed a sigh of relief, and finally he could do his work with peace of mind. It's easy to deal with Frodovich, but it's not so easy to deal with others. Even coercion and inducement may not achieve good results, because too many people know about it. "Oh? What are you going to do, Nicholas?" I asked. "It's impossible for them to get married at this age, so the best way is to send Anna to Vienna. When she arrives in Vienna, we can place our people around her. This is the best solution." Seeing Nicholas nod continuously, Duke Liubei continued. "Besides, young people are always fickle. Once the Austrian crown prince gets tired of her, it will be convenient to take her back. If she really succeeds, she will be surrounded by our people. On the one hand, cutting off her connection with the country reduces the risk of exposure, and on the other hand, it is convenient for us to control her. Just do as you say." Nicholas waved his hand. He still had to go back to attend the banquet. After all, he was the protagonist today. He still had a surprise for Palmerston. He really wanted to see what expression this arrogant fat man would have. Nicholas had a shipwreck report in his hand. A British cargo ship was attacked and sunk by local fishermen in the western Indian Ocean. The 3,000 boxes of opium on it also sank, and the ship was the asset of Palmerston's youngest son. If these opium were transported to the east, they would make huge profits, and Palmerston's youngest son did not buy insurance to save costs. According to conservative estimates, the loss this time was at least more than £400,000, but now he has lost everything. In the hall, Palmerston was still boasting about the power of the British Empire. He now urgently needed an ally. Because he was unknowingly isolated in the previous negotiations, even the Ottomans who had been around him suddenly became Guizot's lackeys. Prussia was also moving away from Britain to prevent Britain from dumping goods. Austria and Franz, who had just been at loggerheads in the negotiations, became as close as brothers at some point. It even made Metternich, who had just taken advantage of the Sardinia issue, publicly support France's debt collection from Sardinia. Palmerston originally wanted to support Sardinia to balance France and Austria, but now the 2 major countries of France and Austria are actually joining hands to suppress the Kingdom of Sardinia. Now it seems that there is no hope. How could countries like France and Austria, which have serious conflicts of interest, join forces? Palmerston had a big question mark in his mind. It doesn't look like a gesture, because even the mad dog Hina is pulling a French general to party. People who are full of war and weapons can't act. But what magic did Guizot use to make the Austrians have such a big change? Palmerston was a little confused. Could it be wine? Old man Metternich must have drunk too much. He actually supported his opponent. If I had known earlier, I would have given him some wine. No wonder the diplomats of the older generation like to discuss things over wine. Can't these people be more rational and smarter like me? Palmerston muttered in his heart. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. The Tsar walked towards Palmerston with a list. Chapter 149 Guizot's proposal. I hope your country can support our country to recover the investment in the Kingdom of Sardinia, Guizot said straight to the point. Puff, Hina, who was drinking on the side, couldn't help it, because this kind of occasion was not suitable for him. He preferred to drink alone rather than to be with a group of politicians he didn't know. But Guizot's words really made him laugh. Even Hina, a politician, knew that France and Austria had irreconcilable contradictions on the issue of Italy. And the Kingdom of Sardinia was the focus of the 2 countries' competition for the Italian peninsula. What kind of routine is this? Are you expecting old man Metternich to kill himself with a knife? Hina thought so in his heart, but during this time with Metternich, he knew that some words were better kept in his heart. Metternich seemed much calmer. Although he was a little surprised, he decided to listen. Mr. Guizot, Your arrival adds a lot of color to this banquet, doesn't it? Please sit down." Metternich poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Guizot. Metternich had seen all kinds of storms and waves, and he just wanted to see the chips that Guizot brought. But subconsciously he just thought it was a joke, because Italy is currently the focus of Austria's development. Archduke Franz, the Crown Prince of Austria, has been working hard for this matter, and it is only a matter of time before Archduke Franz succeeds to the throne. Emotionally, Metternich is very supportive of Franz's succession, because his biggest supporter is Franz's mother, Madame Sophie, who is also Franz's teacher. "Sir Metternich, we in France have a lot of investment in the Kingdom of Sardinia, even including the navy of the Kingdom of Sardinia. We have funded it. Otherwise, they would not be able to form a navy large enough to fight against Austria." He now became even more confused after listening to it. Before, the Austrians thought that the navy of the Kingdom of Sardinia was formed with the help of the British. After all, those ships were bought from Britain, but France admitted it now. Metternich took a sip and said, "This is a matter between your country and the Kingdom of Sardinia. We don't know and don't want to ask. It's just the contents of the Treaty of St. Petersburg, please abide by it." It is impossible to make Metternich speak first without showing the chips. Guizot was naturally aware of this, but the nature of capitalists is to obtain the greatest benefits at the lowest cost. Guizot still tried, but it was not unexpected that he did not succeed. "I heard that your country is raising funds to build the Northern Italian Railway. Our country can provide you with loans and technicians. If necessary, we can also provide you with high-quality railways and cement. The price is negotiable. The railways in northern Italy are all royal and private capital. The Austrian Western Railway Company, established in the name of Archduke John and Archduke Karl, has done a great job. The Austrian Western Railway Company is currently the most powerful railway company in Austria. Its shareholders are mainly Austrian nobles and private capitalists. The royal family is still very appealing. Coupled with the stimulation of the performance of the Rothschild family's Northern Railway Company, the scale of the Austrian Western Railway Company has exceeded that of the Northern Railway Company. However, the mountains between Austria and northern Italy have always been a huge problem. Before the opening of the Semmering Railway in 1854, no one thought that railways could be built from such high mountains. Franz was not sure about the success rate of building the Semmering Railway and the Brenner Tunnel in advance, and he did not want to take the risk. Franz's plan was to build a railway from Venice to Trieste on the plain. This would connect with Emperor Ferdinand's Southern Railway and make a detour. Although the distance was 3 times that of the Semmering Railway, the cost was only 1/5 of that of the Semmering Railway, and the difficulty was much less. Because the Southern Railway had basically been built, only the railway between Venice and Trieste needed to be built. The latest novel was first published on the 6th book bar on September 9. Chapter 150 Chapter 17.1 Guizot's Proposal, 2. Why didn't the Austrian Empire adopt such a cost-effective route? Because the two ports are in a competitive relationship, coupled with the outrageous tariffs between northern Italy and Austria, people have almost no desire to build railways. The Venice-Trieste line is too close to the coast and is extremely vulnerable to threats from the sea. Austria's naval power is too weak, and the enemy can easily cut off this railway by attacking from the sea. Moreover, the operators of the Southern Railway are afraid that others will share their exclusive interests. They have bribed officials many times to obstruct the construction of the railway. But this time it was proposed by the royal family, and these capitalists couldn't refuse it at all. Although the Austrian royal family is very weak, they are still nominal rulers anyway. At the very least, each archduke has dozens or hundreds of guards under his command. And which capitalist dares to blatantly organize dozens or hundreds of guards? Then what awaits him is either being caught by the gendarmerie as a rooster that lays eggs, or being sent directly to prison for credit. The news that the Austrian Empire is preparing to build the Great Illyrian Railway has long been a hot topic. If the Great Illyrian Railway is completed, Trieste will surpass Venice and become the second Vienna. As a capitalist, there is no reason to be at odds with money. Even if you are at odds with money, no one wants to be at odds with life. As for those who don't want money or life, they'd better die. The construction of the Venice-Trieste line has greatly reduced Austria's cost of operating in Italy. However, the tariffs between Austria and northern Italy cannot be abolished for the time being. Because merchants in Austria and northern Italy are afraid that the other party's goods will enter their markets, thus affecting their own interests. The nobles in the two places also oppose the abolition of tariffs for the same reason. But there are still loopholes to exploit. The Austrian royal family can invest directly in northern Italy, set up trading companies in Austria and northern Italy at the same time, and then transfer from left hand to right hand to avoid tariff issues. Although it is a bit shameless, in order to achieve some great goals, it doesn't matter whether the means are dirty or vulgar. The Austrian royal family praised this and felt that they had finally found a way to exercise power. Franz felt that he had opened the door to the devil, and it would definitely be a bloody storm when the royal family's tax-free privileges were taken back in the future. Fortunately, there are not many royal members of the Habsburg family, and most of them are not very smart. Most people live on annuities and have no habit of investing. In fact, it is because in the past Europe, it was a very shameful thing for nobles to do business. As a member of the royal family doing business, that face is even more lost. So Archduke John and Archduke Karl were regarded as outliers and were isolated. However, with the development of the social commodity economy, this concept is constantly changing. Now even the extremely conservative Metternich and Mrs. Sophie have established their own factories. It is not enough to control northern Italy economically. Austria also needs to repair the fortress. This is not only to defend against local rebellions, but also to prevent foreign invasions. It's just that the imaginary enemy of the Austrian military is the French, and the fortress in the south is to prevent a Bourbon dynasty living in the southern end of Italy from getting excited and attacking Austria with the French. For Austria now, of course, the more money the better. The Venice-Trieste-Illyria railway alone requires a huge amount of funds, not to mention the cost of other branch lines. And whether from the perspective of economic interests or national security, the Semmering Railway and the Brenner Tunnel will be opened sooner or later. This is another considerable expense. Building the Illyria Railway first is to accumulate experience for the future construction of the Semmering Railway. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.